Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mishnapad Paramahamsa Parujikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Mishnupad Paramahamsa Parujikacharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 19th day of August, 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 18 entitled Conclusion, the Perfection of Renunciation, text 67 at the bottom of page 706. 706. Okay. 706, you got it? Okay. Idam te natapaskaya nabhaktaya kadachana nachachushushave vacham nachamam yo vyasuyati. Idam te natapaskaya nabhaktaya kadachana nachashushave vacham nachamang yom yasuyati. Idam te natapaskaya nabhaktaya kadachana nachashushave vacham nachamang yom yasuyati. Alex? Idam te natapaskaya nabhaktaya kadachana nachashushave vacham Nachamam yom yasuyati. Glenn, give it a shot. Idam te natapaskaya na bhaktaya kadachana nachashushushave vacham nachamam yom yasuyati. You want to try it, Tapas? Idam te natapaskaya na bhaktaya kadachana nachashushushave vacham nachamam yom yasuyati. Idam, this te, by you, na, never, atapaskaya, to one who is not austere, na, never, abhaktaya, to one who is not a devotee, kadachana, at any time, na, never, cha, also, ashushushave, to one who is not engaged in devotional service, vacham, to be spoken, na, never, cha, also, mam, toward me, ya, anyone who, abhyasuyati, is envious. Translation. This confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere or devoted or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me. Purport. Persons who have not undergone the austerities of the religious process, who have never attempted devotional service in Krishna consciousness, who have not tended a pure devotee, and especially those who are conscious of Krishna only as a historical personality, or who are envious of the greatness of Krishna, should not be told this most confidential part of knowledge. It is, however, sometimes found that even demoniac persons who are envious of Krishna, worshipping Krishna in a different way, take to the profession of explaining the Bhagavad Gita in a different way to make business. But anyone who desires actually to understand Krishna must avoid such commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. Actually, the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is not understandable to those who are sensuous. Even if one is not sensuous, but is strictly following the disciplines adjoined in the Vedic scripture, if he is not a devotee, he also cannot understand Krishna. And even when one poses himself as a devotee of Krishna, but is not engaged in Krishna conscious activities, he also cannot understand Krishna. There are many persons who envy Krishna because he has explained in the Bhagavad Gita that he is the Supreme and that nothing is above him or equal to him. There are many persons who are envious of Krishna. Such persons should not be told of the Bhagavad Gita, for they cannot understand. There is no possibility of faithless persons understanding the Bhagavad Gita and Krishna. Without understanding Krishna from the authority of a pure devotee, one should not try to comment upon the Bhagavad Gita. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmiditanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, this is a restriction of who is eligible to hear the Bhagavad Gita according to Krishna. And there's several points. First one is one has to be austere. If one is not austere, then he shouldn't hear it. If he's not a devotee, he shouldn't hear it. And ashushushave, to one who is not engaged in devotional service. Now that seems to be pretty close to not a devotee. So here's this shushushave, which also has the connotation, who's not eager to hear, who's not hearing in the right mood, which is receptively. This word very prominently comes up in the Bhagavatam, right near the beginning, second verse. How's it go? Dharmak projita kaita vota patamoni matsaranam satam vejam vastavamatavastu shivadam tapatrayon moolanam Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamanikote King Vapada Ishvara Sadjo Rudjavate Sadjo Ridjavarujate Chakutabi Shushushavo. Like I forgot the last word. But this is an explanation of the Bhagavatam. Goes through many different points. One is that cheating religions are kicked out. It's only understood by those who are non-envious, and Paramahamsas actually. compiled by Vyasadeva in his maturity. And what's the need for any other scripture, it says? If one attentively hears, that's where the Shushushabe comes in. One attentively hears this literature with the proper mood, then one will have the Lord manifest in his heart. He will appear in his heart right away. So what do you have to worry about so many other things? That's the goal. So it's interesting because this word Shushushabe has different forms, means to hear with rapt attention. Prabhupada gave two basic translations of this word. And that is a submissive oral reception and ardent hearing. Now, what they both imply is that you're not just hearing the meaning of it, but you're actually taking it and allowing it to transform your life. In other words, there are injunctions, just like Bhagavad Gita is full of do's and do nots. And if you follow those, you hear and then you follow, then you're Shushushabe. But if you hear and it just goes in one ear and out the other, or it's some academic course, I better hear carefully because there's going to be a test on it. And then if you pass the test, that's it for that, that Bhagavad Gita course. Now let's go on to something else. That's not Shushushabe. It really means submissive oral reception. You're allowing the instructions to transform your life. So that's a expanded meaning of the Shushushabe. So Krishna is setting up all these conditions. And Prabhupada expands it to who should speak the Bhagavad Gita, who should teach the Bhagavad Gita. And he goes through various people who are teaching for nefarious reasons. If you're sensuous, in other words, you're involved in sense gratification, you're not austere, that's part of it. So it's not understandable by those who are involved in sense gratification what to speak of teaching it if one is not austere. It becomes, the meaning is lost. The actual import is lost. And Prabhupada was faced with that when he came to America. That's why he was so happy when finally the unabridged Bhagavad Gita came out with all its faults, but still it was a million times better than anything else on the market because it gave it as it is. Krishna's words were no longer being filtered through these non-devotees and, materially interested persons. So that's what he's talking about here. They're envious of Krishna. They should not be told of the Bhagavad Gita, nor should they teach the Bhagavad Gita. But then, in the next purport, or a few purports on, Krishna will say, but, sometimes devotees of Krishna, they give classes on Bhagavad Gita. I mean, Prabhupada would give classes, to thousands of people in India. In the early 70s, they had these pandals and it would all come. Not all of them were, fitting this criteria of Krishna. So he says that out of mercy and compassion, they present it. Just like the book distribution. In a sense, you're presenting the Bhagavad Gita to people who could be as far as possible from meeting these criteria. But still, that's their only hope. So, therefore, the pure devotees, they sometimes violate this injunction of Krishna. All right, let's go on. Yahidam paramam guyam madan bhakte shabidasyati bhakti mahi param kritva mame vaishyatya sangshayaha. For one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. And I have to admit, this is one of the reasons I've been giving this class for 30 years. I'm making just reading the book and reading Prabhupada's purports is complete. Whatever else we do. I'm kidding. That this is an encouragement for all of us to become well versed and to present Bhagavad Gita, to others. Live it. What's it? What's that motto? Learn it, live it, give it. That's what this is all about. Generally, it is advised. Now, here Prabhupada says, generally, it is advised that the Bhagavad Gita be discussed amongst devotees only. For those who are not devotees will understand neither Krishna nor the Bhagavad Gita. That's what the previous verse said. Those who do not accept Krishna as he is and the Bhagavad Gita as it is should not try to explain the Bhagavad Gita whimsically and become offenders. The Bhagavad Gita should be explained to persons who are ready to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is a subject matter for the devotees only, and not for philosophical speculators. Anyone, however, who tries sincerely to present the Bhagavad Gita as it is, will advance in devotional activities and reach the pure devotional state of life. As a result of such pure devotion, he is sure to go back home, back to Godhead. Well, that's encouraging. Try to, it's Bhagavad Gita is it's not easy to understand with all of the intricacies Prabhupada presents, especially in the purports, but it's feasible to become well versed in the principles. There's a finite, and we can become agents. But living the Bhagavad Gita, and therefore having the strength to present it with effect, people they say, "Oh, this person is actually living it," rather than just some course or something in the college. And so this is what Prabhupada wanted us to do. He wanted us to take these principles seriously, and then present them in a way that people could understand, and change their lives. And now here's a very famous verse: "Nacha tasma manusheshu kaschan me priyakrittamaha bhavita nacha me tasmad anyak priyataro bhuvi." There is no servant in the world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear, one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees. Text 70. Adyeshyate chayahimam dhamyam samvadam avayoho jnana yagyena tenaham ishtasyamiti me matihi. And I declare that he who studies this sacred conversation of ours worships me by his intelligence. 71. Shraddhavadana suyascha shunuyadapiyo naraha sopi mukta shubhalokan prapnuyat punyakarmanam. And one who listens with faith and without envy becomes free from sinful reactions and attains to the auspicious planets where the pious dwell. Purport. In the 67th verse of this chapter, the Lord explicitly forbade the Gita's being spoken to those who are envious of the Lord. In other words, the Bhagavad Gita is for the devotees only. But it so happens that sometimes a devotee of the Lord will hold open class, and in that class, not all the students are expected to be devotees. Why do such persons hold open class? It is explained here that although not everyone is a devotee, still there are many men who are not envious of Krishna. They have faith in him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If such persons hear from a bona fide devotee about the Lord, the result is that they become at once free from all sinful reactions, and after that attain to the planetary system where all righteous persons are situated. Therefore, simply by hearing the Bhagavad Gita, even a person who does not try to be a pure devotee attains the result of righteous activities. Thus, a pure devotee of the Lord gives everyone a chance to become free from all sinful reactions and to become a devotee of the Lord. Generally, those who are free from sinful reactions, those who are righteous, very easily take to Krishna consciousness. The word punya karmanam is very significant here. This refers to the performance of great sacrifices, like the Ashwamedha Yajna, mentioned in the Vedic literature. Those who are righteous in performing devotional service, but who are not pure, can attain the planetary system of the pole star, or Dhruva Loka, where Dhruva Maharaj is presiding. He is a great devotee of the Lord, and he has a special planet, which is called the pole star. And that pole star is actually a Vaikuntha planet within this material world. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, that's where the ocean of milk is, in Dhruva Loka. All right. Go ahead.
Well, someone may ask, well, sometimes we give class and the people in the audience aren't pure.
Yeah.
But he says, but still, even though they aren't, how do you say?
But it so happens that...
Yeah, but the criteria he gives, they have faith. They aren't envious, but they have faith. But still, a lot of people in the audience don't even have that.
Yeah.
So...
Well, this is kind of the risks that the great devotees take. Just like the book distributors. they're presenting these books. People pay something, it's true. But then the book, I mean, you can ask them, over the years, sometime in the airports, the trash would be filled with the books. People would look at it and say, well, why did I buy this? Or, and then threw it away. There wasn't, what qualification do they have to receive it? Not at all. So that's kind of so they take a risk. There's kind of a risk there because they're, you shouldn't present it to someone who's not at least pious, submissive to some degree. So this is a similar thing, like I say, the Sunday feast. Well, he's inviting everybody. You listen to those first classes. I go around and around Prabhupada's classes in the 22nd Avenue, and people are wandering off the street, or even more dramatically when he came to the West Coast and Haight-Ashbury, and people wouldn't even be in their right minds. They would claim they were God, like that. And yet Prabhupada's, he's giving a class, He's taking a risk, in a sense, disobeying this order of Krishna. But he's doing it so that, some of the people it will take hold. They'll actually become devotees. The movement will prosper. Every moment counts. In other words, Prabhupada was always on the clock. He came in so late. So he took risks so that, some of the people are, it's like pearls before swine, and it's, but I'm willing to undergo the punishment for that so that those who are qualified will hear and will have. So it's kind of this, this is a one of the instructions that for out of compassion, if you're doing, you're breaking the rules, and I'm hoping Krishna will forgive for that. That's the idea. Okay, and I think the next one is, we're coming to the end here. Well, no, it's not the end. Arjuna has to come in. Okay, now he asks the serious questions. Kachideta chutam parta chayakagrena chetasa kachada jnana sammoha panashtaste dhananjaya. O son of Pritha, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind, and are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled? Purport. The Lord was acting as the spiritual master of Arjuna. Therefore it was Krishna's duty, to inquire from Arjuna whether he understood the whole Bhagavad Gita in its proper perspective. If not, the Lord was ready to re-explain any point, or the whole Bhagavad Gita if so required. Actually, anyone who hears the Bhagavad Gita from a bona fide spiritual master like Krishna, or his representative, will find that all his ignorance is dispelled. The Bhagavad Gita is not an ordinary book written by a poet or fiction writer. It is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Any person fortunate enough to hear these teachings from Krishna or from his bona fide spiritual representative is sure to become a liberated person and get out of the darkness of ignorance. So this is interesting. Krishna was ready to start at the beginning, which we will do again in a few days. All right, moving on. So this key response of Arjuna. Arjuna vacha nashto moha smatir labdha tratpasaran mayachyuta sitosmi gata sandeha karishe vachanang tava. Arjuna said, My dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt, and am prepared to act according to your instructions. Purport. The constitutional position of a living entity, represented by Arjuna, is that he has to act according to the order of the Supreme Lord. He is meant for self-discipline. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that the actual position of the living entity is that of eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. Forgetting this principle, the living entity becomes conditioned by material nature. But in serving the Supreme Lord, he becomes the liberated servant of God. The living entity's constitutional position is to be a servitor. He has to serve either the illusory Maya or the Supreme Lord. If he serves the Supreme Lord, he is in his normal condition. But if he prefers to serve the illusory external energy, then certainly he will be in bondage. In illusion, the living entity is serving in this material world. He is bound by his lust and desires, yet he thinks of himself as the master of the world. This is called illusion. When a person is liberated, his illusion is over, and he voluntarily surrenders unto the Supreme to act according to his desires. The last illusion, the last snare of Maya to trap the living entity, is the proposition that he is God. The living entity thinks that he is no longer a conditioned soul, but God. He is so unintelligent that he does not think that if he were God, then how could he be in doubt? That he does not consider. So that is the last snare of illusion. Actually, to become free from the illusory energy is to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and agree to act according to his order. The word moha is very important in this verse. Moha refers to that which is opposed to knowledge. Actually, real knowledge is the understanding that every living being is eternally a servitor of the Lord. But instead of thinking oneself in that position, the living entity thinks that he is not a servant, that he is the master of this material world. For he wants to lord it over the material nature. That is his illusion. This illusion can be overcome by the mercy of the Lord or by the mercy of a pure devotee. When that illusion is over, one agrees to act in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is acting according to Krishna's order. A conditioned soul, illusioned by the external energy of matter, does not know that the Supreme Lord is the Master who is full of knowledge and who is the proprietor of everything. Whatever he, the Lord, desires, he can bestow upon his devotees. He is the friend of everyone, and he is especially inclined to his devotee. He is the controller of this material nature and of all living entities. He is also the controller of the inexhaustible time, and he is full of all opulences and all potencies. The Supreme Personality of Godhead can even give himself to the devotee. One who does not know him is under the spell of illusion. He does not become a devotee, but a servitor of Maya. Can you turn that off now? I think it's a little distracting. Thanks. Arjuna, however, after hearing the Bhagavad Gita from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, became free from all illusion. He could understand that Krishna was not only his friend, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he understood Krishna factually. So to study the Bhagavad Gita is to understand Krishna factually. When a person is in full knowledge, he naturally surrenders to Krishna. When Arjuna understood that it was Krishna's plan to reduce the unnecessary increase of population, he agreed to fight according to Krishna's desire. Again he took up his weapons, his arrows and bow, to fight under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is kind of an anthem for aspiring bhaktas, that we can also say, Nashto moha smritir labdha, that my illusion, long-held illusion for many, many births, lifetimes, is now destroyed, and we regain our memory. This is a significant point, is that Prabhupada sometimes explains that all this knowledge that we gain from hearing Shastra, and from realized souls, is already in there. In other words, we've forgotten our position, in the spiritual world, and the truth of all the things that we learn in the books. But that's all buried now. It's covered, this idea that our material desires are covering our knowledge, basic principle. So the things that we hear and become realized when we put the knowledge to practice, when we actually practice it. Then the real, grounding truth of it becomes manifest for us. And we're also enlightened from within. The super soul is telling us all these things and enlightening and giving us guidance, direct guidance how to act under his instruction. So that's all part of Nashto Moha Smriti Labdha. And it's all by Krishna's prasad, by his grace, that this is happening. And all my doubts are gone. At the beginning, Arjuna had all these doubts, and so he begged for Madhusudan, the killer of the Madhu demon, to slay the doubts. It's explained in one purport. That the names are important, how Krishna is addressed. So the doubts take different forms. Sometimes we find that we believe in the philosophy, we believe Krishna is God, and all the things there. but we doubt whether we can actually follow it. You know? But that's a doubt in Krishna, because Krishna can empower anyone to do anything. We doubt that Krishna is actually so all-encompassingly powerful that he can even, give us the strength to follow Krishna consciousness. So that's a subtle form of doubt. It takes a form of doubt in oneself, but it's really also doubting the omnipotence of Krishna. So here, all Arjuna's doubts are gone, and he's going to need this confidence that Krishna can empower him, because they're outnumbered. I mean, on the face of it, the other side has all the advantages. They've got Bhishma Dev, and they've got more army, and and Karna is there, and everything. But Arjuna, when he had the choice, he took Krishna rather than his armies. So he has Krishna on his side. So as we'll read in the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita, wherever there is Arjuna, wherever there is Krishna, there will surely be victory, morality, and so then this key phrase, which is kind of something we should all take to heart, karashe vachanang tava. I mean, that's kind of the whole ball game right there. I will do as you say. He said, now I will do as you say. So if we can actually say that to Krishna and his bona fide representatives, that's pure devotion. If in every moment we can be acting according to the words of the authority. So this verse is very nice. It's the way in which the living entity surrenders and really lives the enlightenment coming from the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, and now Sanjay, he's revealing his mood now in the next couple of verses. Sanjay Uvacha. You remember Sanjay is actually relating this whole thing to Dhritarashtra. Ityaham vasudevasya partasya cha mahatmanaha sambadam imam ashrausham adbhutam romaharshanam. Sanjay said, "Thus have I heard the conversation of two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna. And so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end." Purport. In the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Dhritarashtra inquired from his secretary Sanjay, what happened on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? The entire study was related to the heart of Sanjay by the grace of his spiritual master Vyas. He, Sanjay, thus explained the theme of the battlefield. The conversation was wonderful because such an important conversation between two great souls had never taken place before and would not take place again. It was wonderful because the Supreme Personality of Godhead was speaking about himself and his energies to the living entity, Arjuna, a great devotee of the Lord. If we follow in the footsteps of Arjuna to understand Krishna, then our life will be happy and successful. Sanjay realized this, and as he began to understand it, he related the conversation to Dhritarashtra. Now it is concluded that wherever there is Krishna and Arjuna, there is victory. Prabhupada is anticipating the 78th verse, which is the last verse. Vyasa prasadat chutavan etad guyamaham param yogam yogeshwarat krishnat sakshat katayatak svayam. By the mercy of Vyas, I have heard these most confidential talks directly from the master of all mysticism, Krishna, who was speaking personally to Arjuna. Purport. Vyas was the spiritual master of Sanjay, and Sanjay admits that it was Vyas's mercy that he could understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that one has to understand Krishna not directly, but through the medium of the spiritual master. The spiritual master is the transparent medium, although it is true that the experience is still direct. This is the mystery of the disciplic succession. When the spiritual master is bona fide, then one can hear the Bhagavad Gita directly, as Arjuna heard it. There are many mystics and yogis all over the world, but Krishna is the master of all yoga systems. Krishna's instruction is explicitly stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Surrender unto Krishna. One who does so is the topmost yogi. This is confirmed in the last verse of the 6th chapter. Yoginam api sarvesham. Narada is the direct disciple of Krishna and the spiritual master of Vyas. Therefore, Vyas is as bona fide as Arjuna because he comes in the disciplic succession, and Sanjaya is the direct disciple of Vyasa. Therefore, by the grace of Vyasa, Sanjaya's senses were purified, and he could see and hear Krishna directly. One who directly hears Krishna can understand this confidential knowledge. If one does not come to the disciplic succession, he cannot hear Krishna. Therefore, his knowledge is always imperfect, at least as far as understanding the Bhagavad Gita is concerned. In the Bhagavad Gita, all the yoga systems, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, are explained. Krishna is the master of all such mysticism. It is to be understood, however, that as Arjuna was fortunate enough to understand Krishna directly, so by the grace of Vyasa, Sanjaya was also able to hear Krishna directly. Actually, there is no difference between hearing directly from Krishna and hearing directly from Krishna via a bona fide spiritual master like Vyasa. The spiritual master is the representative of Vyasadeva also. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, on the birthday of the spiritual master, the disciples conduct a ceremony called Vyasa Puja. Okay, so we're getting a little lesson in the power of the disciplic succession here. And, you know, the whole the whole idea is that we have to have faith that we're getting it as it is, you know, and it's not been distorted. And that's what Prabhupada explaining here, is that Sanjaya is a disciple of Vyasadeva, Vyasadeva is a disciple of Narada, Narada heard directly from Krishna, and so it's come to us in its actual original form. But still, you know, if we look at those letters, maybe you can read them, Tapas, you know, the Devanagari, but it was all hidden before Prabhupada, you know, liberated it and put it into the English language. What good did it really do us? A few Sanskrit scholars came and taught some university somewhere, but basically it had no real impact, this knowledge, until Prabhupada came and explained it so that we could understand it, put it into the English language, you know, and then took help from some of his editors to make it, you know, more readable and grammatically correct, whatever. But the whole idea is that there's no motivated presentation here. Nobody has an agenda, you know, to emphasize this point or cover that point. I think I mentioned that there was one yoga group back in the 70s or back in the 60s and 70s who they presented the Bhagavad Gita, but only to the end of the 6th chapter. That was it. That's all we need, you know. You know, the middle 6 chapters are the essential ones, but they only play into the first. So this is an extreme example of how, without the disciplic succession, we're lost. That we're so fortunate to have Prabhupada come and give this Bhagavad Gita as it is. So now he gets into the repetition. When you see repetition of Sanskrit words, it's always emphasis. And what to speak of 3 times, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama. But you see several times he repeats in the next verse. Tacha samsmitya samsmitya. Oh, I'm sorry. Rajan samsmitya samsmitya. Sambadam imamadbhutam. Keshavarjana yo punyam. Rishyami chamahu mahu. O King, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure, being thrilled at every moment. Purport. The understanding of the Bhagavad Gita is so transcendental that anyone who becomes conversant with the topics of Arjuna and Krishna becomes righteous, and he cannot forget such talks. This is the transcendental position of spiritual life. In other words, one who hears the Gita from the right source, directly from Krishna, attains full Krishna consciousness. The result of Krishna consciousness is that one becomes increasingly enlightened, and he enjoys life with a thrill, not only for some time, but at every moment. So, there's so much nectar in the Bhagavad Gita. You know, there's a wonderful story of Lord Chaitanya, his trip to South India. I think it was the big temple in Sri Rangam. So he enters the temple, and there's a Brahmin there reading the Bhagavad Gita out loud, reciting it. But there's a few others who are mocking him because he really can't read. He's illiterate. So they're making fun of him, and he's just going on reading. So Lord Chaitanya, he comes and he asks him, "What are you doing?" And he sees that he's not mocking, he really wants to know. So he stops and he explains, "Well, my spiritual master instructed me to read to read means recite, to recite the Bhagavad Gita every day. But I'm illiterate. So I try my best. Prabhupada gives an imitation. Ong, 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 just something. So Lord just said, yes, I can understand that, but sometimes I see you crying. What are these tears all about? So he says, yes, I'm crying. And this was misunderstood in the first edition. Because what he says there is that whenever I open the book, I see the picture of Arjuna and Krishna on the chariot, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has taken the role of his servant, of his devotee, and immediately I'm moved by the scene and I cry, when I see that. And so Lord Chaitanya embraced him. You're the actual knower of the Bhagavad Gita. In other words, the whole point there is that, and the misediting was that devotees are so used to having pictures in the books, So they're thinking, oh, he's looking at the picture. So I'm looking, I look at the picture. He sees it in his mind. The mind is in his mind. It suddenly has a revelation of the actual scene on the battlefield. So the idea is that the Bhagavad Gita is meant to transform us, to transform our lives. And here we find Sanjay, he's a realized soul. I mean, he's heard it directly now. And he's explaining these repetition, and it goes on in the next verse also. Means that there's high emotion. He himself is so, moved by what he's witnessed, and it's come down to him. So everything about Krishna is like that. We don't experience it so much in a covered state, but when we get more purified, everything related to Krishna is an udipana. There's a technical term in the nectar of devotion. Udipana means something that lights up your emotion, your devotion. Is heart. Like Krishna's flute is an udipana. Krishna himself, in one sense, is an udipana. Mother Yashoda, the classic case. She sees a little bracelet that Krishna was wearing. Now he's graduated to herding the calves. So now he's going out in the forest, and she's missing him. It's an udipana. Hair stands on end, and the tears flow. So, for the great devotees, everything in the world, can remind you of Krishna. That's the whole idea of chapter 7. Is that, you drinking some water? You should know that's my energy. That's me. You see the light of the sun? That's me. Now, if you can mold your life in such a way that you're remembering those simple instructions, then you're always Krishna conscious. Which is the whole idea of that chapter, the first step in God realization. But the great devotees, they're taking great. Just like we, every morning we sing this Chaturvadashi Bhagavad Prasada verse, right? So, I don't know if you've ever thought of the structure of this Guruvashtaka, but it starts out with the Samsara Davananda Lila Loka Tranaya. That the spiritual master is delivering people who are suffering in the blazing fire of samsara out of his mercy, like a cloud of mercy raining down. What's he raining down? Everything that we get, the holy name and the deities and the prasadam and the association and the books and Krishna consciousness. So that's the nature of the spiritual master, and he's has all wonderful qualities. And then the next verse talks about Mahaprabhu's kirtan, how he's engaging in it and is ecstatic, and he's also engaging us in deity worship. And then the next verse, when you have deities and you have prasadam, so he takes great pleasure not in eating the prasadam, but to see that the devotees are satisfied with the prasadam. And so that's the great joy of the great devotees. They take pleasure in the conditioned souls waking up to Krishna consciousness. That's their great mission. And so the idea is that they're seeing that the opportunity to be Krishna conscious in everybody. Everybody's a devotee. That's one of the visions of the Mahabhagavad. You study the 11th canto. He says everybody is a devotee except themselves. The humility that's but they all have the potential to be devotees. And so nobody's restricted. Even like ants and so, famously people chant to him. Chant to this poor little insect that's expiring or something. That kind of vision is wonderful. So this is Sanjay, just he's now recalling it. He witnessed it, now he's recalling his reaction. So we can also experience, as Prabhupada in many places says, further and further pleasure and enlightenment reading the Bhagavad Gita again and again. That's why we're going through. I don't know how many times I've been through this. But it's true, it never gets stale. Because all of the verses, they pertain to our innermost reality. It's not something superficial that gets dated. What can get dated here? It's the soul, the body, God's energies, the spiritual world. It's all eternal knowledge. Wonderful. All right, going on. Looks like we're going to finish. Tacha samsmitya samsmitya rupamadhyat putam hare vismayo me mahan rajan rishyami chapunak punaha. And now he's referring to the universal form. O King, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. Purport. It appears that Sanjay also, by the grace of Vyas, could see the universal form Krishna exhibited to Arjuna. It is, of course, said that Lord Krishna had never exhibited such a form before. It was exhibited to Arjuna only, yet some great devotees could also see the universal form of Krishna when it was shown to Arjuna, and Vyas was one of them. He is one of the great devotees of the Lord, and he is considered to be a powerful incarnation of Krishna. Vyas, that's Vyas. Vyas disclosed this to his disciple Sanjay, who remembered that wonderful form of Krishna exhibited to Arjuna and enjoyed it repeatedly. Okay, let's go. We'll finish it. Yatra yogeshwara Krishna, yatra partho dhanurdaraha, tatra shri vijayo bhutir, dhruvanitir matir mama. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. Purport. The Bhagavad Gita began with an inquiry of Dhritarashtra's. He was hopeful of the victory of his sons, assisted by great warriors like Bhishma, Drona, and Karna. He was hopeful that the victory would be on his side. But after describing the scene on the battlefield, Sanjay told the king, "You are thinking of victory, but my opinion is that where Krishna and Arjuna are present, there will be all good fortune." He directly confirmed that Dhritarashtra could not expect victory for his side. Victory was certain for the side of Arjuna because Krishna was there. Krishna's acceptance of the post of charioteer for Arjuna was an exhibition of another opulence. Krishna is full of all opulences, and renunciation is one of them. There are many instances of such renunciation, for Krishna is also the master of renunciation. The fight was actually between Duryodhana and Yudhishthira. Arjuna was fighting on behalf of his elder brother, Yudhishthira. Because Krishna and Arjuna were on the side of Yudhishthira, Yudhishthira's victory was certain. The battle was to decide who would rule the world, and Sanjay predicted that the power would be transferred to Yudhishthira. It is also predicted here that Yudhishthira, after gaining victory in this battle, would flourish more and more because not only was he righteous and pious, but he was also a strict moralist. He never spoke a lie during his life. There are many less intelligent persons who take the Bhagavad Gita to be a discussion of topics between two friends on a battlefield. But such a book cannot be scripture. Some may protest that Krishna incited Arjuna to fight, which is immoral, but the reality of the situation is clearly stated. The Bhagavad Gita is the supreme instruction in morality. That's the nitir word here in the verse. The supreme instruction of morality is stated in the 9th chapter, in the 34th verse. Manmana bhava manbhakta. One must become a devotee of Krishna, and the essence of all religion is to surrender unto Krishna. Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam braja. The instructions of the Bhagavad Gita constitute the supreme process of religion and of morality. All other processes may be purifying and may lead to this process, but the last instruction of the Gita is the last word in all morality and religion. Surrender unto Krishna. This is the verdict of the 18th chapter. From the Bhagavad Gita, we can understand that to realize oneself by philosophical speculation and by meditation is one process, but to fully surrender unto Krishna is the highest perfection. This is the essence of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. The path of regulative principles according to the orders of social life and according to the different courses of religion may be a confidential path of knowledge, but although the rituals of religion are confidential, meditation and cultivation of knowledge are still more confidential. And surrender unto Krishna in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness is the most confidential instruction. That is the essence of the 18th chapter. Another feature of the Bhagavad Gita is that the actual truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The absolute truth is realized in three features: impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Perfect knowledge of the absolute truth means perfect knowledge of Krishna. If one understands Krishna, then all the departments of knowledge are part and parcel of that understanding. Krishna is transcendental, for he is always situated in his eternal internal potency. The living entities are manifested by his energy and are divided into two classes: eternally conditioned and eternally liberated. Such living entities are innumerable, and they are considered fundamental parts of Krishna. The material energy is manifested into 24 divisions. The creation is effected by eternal time, and it is created and dissolved by the external energy. This manifestation of the cosmic world repeatedly becomes visible and invisible. In the Bhagavad Gita, 5 principal subject matters have been discussed: the Supreme Personality of Godhead, material nature, the living entities, eternal time, and all kinds of activities. All is dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. All conceptions of the Absolute Truth, impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and any other transcendental conception exist within the category of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although superficially the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity, material nature, and time appear to be different, nothing is different from the Supreme. But the Supreme is always different from everything. Lord Chaitanya's philosophy is that of, quote, inconceivable oneness and difference. This system of philosophy constitutes perfect knowledge of the Absolute Truth. The living entity in his original position is pure spirit. He is just like an atomic particle of the Supreme Spirit. Thus Lord Krishna may be compared to the sun and the living entities to sunshine. Because the living entities are the marginal energy of Krishna, they have a tendency to be in contact with the material energy or with the spiritual energy. Okay. In other words, the living entity is situated between the two energies of the Lord, and because he belongs to the superior energy of the Lord, he has a particle of independence. By proper use of that independence, he comes under the direct order of Krishna. Thus he attains his normal condition in the pleasure-giving potency. Thus end the Bhagavad purpose to the 18th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of its conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. Hare Krishna. Made it through, huh? All right, we have time for one. I didn't tell you about my little iPad. I gave a verse last night and we ran out of time. I didn't give you the translation. So I think this is the verse. Angsa lambadava makunda dadam mando nata brulatam kinchit kunchit komalada dupatam sachi pasarikshanam alo languli pallavai modolikama pudiyantam muda mule kalpatadoti bangaladitam dyaye jaganmohanam. So this is a verse of meditating on Krishna. His handsome form gracefully bending in 3 places, his beautiful earrings hanging down to his shoulders, the vines of his eyebrows slightly raised, his glance crooked, his delicate lips slightly pursed, and his flower blossom fingers moving restlessly. Krishna happily enchants the entire world as he fills his flute with music as he stands under a kalpa vriksha tree. In this way, one may meditate on Lord Shri Krishna. So it's a beautiful picture of Krishna's form. Okay, we have 1 minute. Any questions? Go ahead. How many times? I don't know. It's hard to give, it depends really on the audience, because sometimes there are more questions and we don't get through as many verses. So I would say maybe 6 or 7 times over the course of the years. No, in all the years. That takes more than a year, I think. Well, especially with the 3 days. I used to have 4 days a week. Now it's only 3 days a week. Anyway, we can try to figure it out. We'll start on Monday, and I'll give the date. Well, I have a lot of the lectures recorded. I can go back and try to find it. For the last 4 years. All right, so this is a question for him. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.